Last lesson in the civil rights movement. So you're going to notice that we're going to talk about the other side of the perspective on how civil rights equality should have been achieved. So again, you're listening for individuals and reform groups or reform movements that are people are going to bring about changes. You're going to notice that we're going to get into some violent side today. So again, listen for the causes and effects and try to pick out the big ideas. So getting right into it. So starting with an old familiar face, Martin Luther King. After his success in Birmingham March, I guess you would say, if you want to call it a success, or the passage of the Civil Rights Act, you're going to notice that African Americans, all of them had the right to vote with the 15th Amendment, if I remember right. But why it matters is that now they have to get the ability to vote. So people are still having literacy tests, poll taxes, and all these other obstacles that African Americans had to go over and to be able to vote. So this leads another very famous march, and this is the Selma March. This is where they walked over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is where they basically were met with heavy resistance again, except for this time it didn't get violent. It just got really, really massive in size. But it's going to catch the attention of Congress, and they are going to pass what is known as the Voters' Rights Act of 1965. So, this is actually going to ban all obstacles to make sure that African Americans vote no matter what, and lead into the 24th Amendment, which is what's officially going to ban what's known as a poll tax. In essence, is that you have to be able to vote in order or pay to go in and vote. So other obstacles, I mean, you've probably heard of the grandfather clause. I mean, people just came up with these ridiculous things to get African Americans like an obstacle to vote. And, you know, this basically made it all illegal. But you're going to notice that even with all these laws being passed, African Americans are still going to be very hostile when they're treated like second class citizens. And then finally, you're going to see that it's going to start exploding into race riots. So, stuff that we're familiar with, unfortunately, in today's time, you're going to notice that the most notable race riot is going to happen during this time period. It's going to happen in Watts, California. And it's going to be almost a week of straight and utter anarchy, and you're going to notice that several deaths, millions of dollars in property damage is going to happen. So obviously, the president of the United States is going to take notice to it. So LBJ, he's going to put some what's called the Kerner Commission into effect, and he's going to ask people to go and basically research why did this happen. But it came back inconclusive. But what we do know is that it basically how a lot of race issues happen. Police are going to basically pull over African Americans. They're going to be harassed, and African Americans are going to basically fight back. So, MLK and company marched on which city to improve voting rights in the South? So, going into the other side again. So, Martin Luther King Jr. preached nonviolence, and then here's his opposite, Malcolm X. He is actually going to be a representative of a group called the Nation of Islam. So, he's actually born in Nebraska, and his last name was Malcolm Little, I guess you would say. And he is going to have this mindset of he's going to get rid of his last name because when African Americans were freed from being slaves, they took on the last name of their owner, and their owner's last name was Little. So he got rid of it. He put an X there because he did not want that to be tagged with him. But with him and his beliefs, he's actually going to start preaching to African Americans that they must fight for their equality. He said, you can no longer just sit there and be peaceful because they're not speaking the same language as the white man. And he had a quote, and I'm going to butcher this, so please forgive me. But if they want to speak with shotguns, then we should speak with shotguns. If they want to speak with peace, then we'll speak with peace. And we should basically speak the language that they're speaking to us. So basically, he said it was okay to fight back as long as you are being fought. So, true or false? Malcolm X, he believed in using violence in response to violence. And then when you get into another group, you're going to notice a group called Black Panthers are going to start popping around. So we're not talking like Wakanda or anything like that. We're talking about a militant group of African American men that are going to start walking around not being victims. They're going to be openly carrying guns. They're going to use very aggressive rhetoric, tone, language, whatever you want to call it, towards anybody that would harass them. And they're actually coined the term Black Power, hence Black Panthers. So when you see all this happening, they're actually going to do some good things in their community too. They're going to start a breakfast program. They're going to start a mentorship, I guess you would say, for African American kids that don't have any fathers. So it's actually going to be a good deal. But when this all kind of falls apart, it's going to be in the mid 70s ish, if I remember right. And the leaders of the Black Panther Party are actually going to be arrested for other crimes. You're going to see that some of them flee the United States because they're going to try to get out of these crimes. So the Black Panthers, unfortunately, weren't sticking around all that long. But the main message is clear that they were not going to be harassed. And one could even say that they had a socialist view. They wanted everybody to be treated the same and basically equal outcome along with equal opportunity. So, question, true or false? Black Panthers believed in using violence to protect themselves. So it's worth noting that Martin Luther King Jr., when he's around during the time of the Black Panthers, during the time of the Malcolm X, he's going to speak out against it. He's going to say, do not be violent, do not be violent. And he's going to take that, unfortunately, to his death. And this is where you're going to see he actually gets slain. This is where he's going to get assassinated. So a gentleman by the name of James Earl Ray is going to snipe him down while Martin Luther King. Wow, that was tough to say. Martin Luther King is outside having a cigarette. And you can see in the picture in the bottom right hand corner, everybody's pointing to where James Earl Ray shot from. And sadly, this is where he lost his life. On the cool side of this, that room that he stayed in, that Martin Luther King Jr. was in, has actually been sealed, and it is exactly the same as the day that he was shot. So if you get to go down there, it'd be kind of cool to see. So it's also worth noting during this same time period, again, a lot of things happening in the 60s. Thurgood Marshall, the guy that was the lawyer for the Brown versus the Board of Education case, he's actually going to become the first African American to sit on the Supreme Court. So this is a big deal because now African Americans have a representative on the highest court in the land. So now he can give his perspective on a lot of things. And there's going to be this thing called affirmative action that's going to be set up here shortly that basically helps balance out racial equalities that he's going to help strengthen, which is a very, very cool thing. So, Martin Luther King Jr., did he support Malcolm X and the Black Panthers' methods of civil equality? True or false?